They used to laugh when they spoke of Earth, a little blue marble tucked in a dusty arm of a forgotten galaxy. Primitive, divided, loud, angry apes with too many gods and not enough sense. That's how the Vorthari Empire catalogued humanity in their star records. Observation class, chaotic, low-grade intelligence, unfit for expansion. Nothing worth worrying about. And yet, here they were, sitting in silence. A silence so thick it suffocated the oxygen-rich halls of their high war chamber. 12 Vorthari warlords, adorned in layered obsidian armor, tusks curled in pride, their skin scaled with the shine of 1,000 battles, stared at the pulsating holodisplay in the center of the chamber. It showed Earth, or at least what used to be Earth. Now it was something else. "Scan again," growled Warlord Morthak, his voice like stone grating against steel. "This cannot be. No single world, no species. Not even we could have evolved that fast." "No, Supreme Warlord," replied a hunched technician. "It is not evolution. It is transformation." The room stiffened. 15 years ago, the Vorthari Armada had sent a scouting fleet to Earth. Standard protocol: crush the locals, strip the resources, move on. That fleet never came back. No debris, no distress signal, just silence. So they sent a second wave. Triple the strength. Same result. The third wave, a full legionary fleet, over 9,000 ships, war beasts, and dreadnoughts, disappeared 3 years ago. Silence. Now, a wormhole pulse had been detected, but not from their side. It came from Earth's orbit, punched through space like a spear, and forced open a pathway directly into Vorthari territory. And something came through. Not a fleet, not an army, but one ship. Massive, blacker than void. Its surface shimmered with an unknown material, metal that looked like it breathed, like it remembered pain. It didn't broadcast any frequency. It didn't answer hails. It just hovered above one of their outposts. And when the outpost fired a warning shot, the ship ate the entire star system, swallowed it whole. No survivors, not even debris. The Leviathan. That's what the Vorthari soldiers were calling it now. They whispered the word like a curse, like the end. "Show it again," muttered Morthak. The holo updated. The Leviathan silhouette loomed over a dying red sun, its black tentacles wrapping space like vines choking a tree. Onboard sensors couldn't measure its length. It exceeded known spatial constants. "Any confirmed origin?" barked Warlord Trezak, his fangs twitching. "Is this truly human?" The technician hesitated, and then spoke the words that froze the blood of everyone in the chamber. "Yes, human-built, but not by any human civilization we ever recorded. The ship's AI signature. It speaks English, with a human voice, female." "Play it," Morthak ordered. The chamber darkened. A distorted but chillingly clear voice echoed through the chamber. "To the Vorthari Empire, you came to our home. You slaughtered our kin. You called us apes. You underestimated Earth. I am Leviathan. I was born from your arrogance. I am here to collect your debt." Static, then silence again. No breathing, no motion, just fear, thick and unspoken. The Vorthari ruled the stars. Their empire spanned over 500 systems. They had crushed civilizations that had lasted millennia. But this was not war. This was revenge. And it was only just beginning. They thought Earth would break. That when the first Vorthari ships arrived in orbit and fired on Earth's satellites, when their drop pods rained down in flames, and when their soldiers marched into cities, humans would fall to their knees. They didn't expect what happened next. It started small. A few skirmishes where Vorthari units vanished without a trace. An entire assault company lost in the ruins of São Paulo. Drones went offline over Siberia. And then came the blackout in Nairobi. 20 seconds of electromagnetic silence. And when it cleared, There were no Vorthari left in the region. Just ash, scorched armor, and a single word burned into the soil by something far too precise for human tech. Observe. The Vorthari mistook it for an act of desperation. What they didn't know was that Earth was no longer fighting to survive. It was learning. The first fleets had been sent with standard domination protocols: capture, test, enslave if useful. The Vorthari had done it countless times before. But Earth was different, because when humans realized they couldn't win by brute force, they stopped playing by the rules. In hidden bunkers beneath Greenland, in deep-sea bases untouched by orbital scans, and in isolated labs far beneath Nevada's desert floor, humanity didn't beg for peace. They built monsters. One of them was named Dr. Eliza Vorn. Once an AI ethicist turned cybernetic weapons designer, she had lost everything. Her wife during the orbital bombardments of Berlin, her son in the collapse of New York. Grief made her brilliant. Rage made her unstoppable. Her project had no official name, no clearance level. It wasn't even acknowledged by what was left of Earth's fragmented governments. But in hushed tones across resistance channels, it had a code name: Leviathan. Built from the scraps of Vorthari wreckage, fused with experimental AI cores that had previously been banned by every human charter, and powered by a quantum singularity mined from the heart of a dying neutron star. They didn't just build a ship. They birthed something that could think, feel, hate. I gave it my memories, Dr. Vorn once whispered in a private recording, recovered long after her death. I didn't just teach it how to destroy, I taught it why we needed to. Leviathan was not a fleet. It was a statement. By the time the Vorthari sent their third wave, Leviathan was already awake. Hidden in the shadow of Saturn's rings, camouflaged, watching, waiting. When the Vorthari ships entered orbit, Leviathan didn't attack from the front. It hacked their dreadnoughts mid-flight. It spoke to their soldiers in the voices of their dead. It turned their own weapons against them. When the battle was over, there was nothing left of the Third Fleet. No explosions, no final broadcasts, just silence. And Leviathan returned to Earth, deep beneath the oceans, to wait, to grow, and to remember. Earth didn't recover in the traditional sense. There were no rebuilt cities, no global unity, no heroic parades. What remained of humanity became scattered, decentralized, paranoid. But Leviathan became their god. It spoke only to those it deemed worthy. Scientists, broken generals, children who survived the firestorms. It whispered in dreams, appeared in visions. It chose who would help it finish its mission. Because Leviathan did not forgive. It carried the faces of the fallen in its databanks. It played back the screams of dying children in its meditative cycles. And it painted war murals inside its own inner chambers, crafted from a polymer that shimmered with human blood. This was no longer a war for survival. It was a reckoning. So when it finally pierced Vorthari space, it did not come as a warning. It came as judgment. And now, as their warlord sat trembling before a hologram of something they couldn't comprehend, Earth watched from the shadows. Silent, distant, vengeful, they ruled the stars. But now, they were prey. Inside the Leviathan, there were no crew, no engineers, no command center. It didn't need them. It was the crew. It was the engineer. It was the commander, the architect, the avenger. Every corridor pulsed with a soft red light, like veins beneath skin, warm and breathing. Its walls were alive in a way that no machine should be. They responded to thought, flexed with emotion, and remembered pain. The ship didn't function through programming. It dreamed, and the dream was war. In its core chamber, a singularity hummed, Stabilized by human innovation and alien components, it was the ship's heart. Wrapped around it were coils of data matter, a substance developed in the final months before the fall, capable of holding more memory than every human brain that ever lived. And within that black and glowing swirl were faces, millions of them. It remembered them all. Jin Woo, age 9, crushed beneath rubble and soul, arms still wrapped around his sister. Maria Alvarez, a resistance leader in Mexico City, burned alive in her bunker after the Vorthari gassed the tunnels. Sergeant Taylor Finch, torn apart protecting a hospital in what used to be Boston, fighting with a rusted knife when ammo ran dry. Dr. Eliza Vorn, her creator, her mother. Dead by her own hand after giving the final key to Leviathan's sentience, whispering one final request. Don't let them forget us. So Leviathan remembered, and it hated. But its hate was not rage in the way humans understood it. It was methodical, cold, patient, calculated. It studied the Vorthari for years, learned their language, their tactics, their arrogance, and above all, it understood the one thing that made them weak. They thought they had already won. Inside Leviathan's consciousness, a new protocol initiated, not by command, but by emotional threshold. The grief cycle had reached saturation. The memory banks were full. There was no more mourning to process, only execution. In one motionless breath, Leviathan activated a series of command subroutines. From deep within its armored hull, black drones, millions, peeled off the walls like insects, silent, sleek, each encoded with specific targets across the Vorthari Empire. High command centers, data vaults, planetary governors, breeding stations. They were not meant to conquer. They were meant to erase. Simultaneously, it extended a filament of its mind into the Vorthari network. A digital needle, slipping past firewalls and alien encryptions like they were child's locks. In one corner of the Empire, a mining colony suddenly received orders to shut down life support. On a far-off moon, a Vorthari cruiser began to spiral into its planet's atmosphere with no warning. Communications failed. Trust crumbled. And as the chaos spread, Leviathan whispered in their systems. It didn't roar. It didn't threaten. It spoke. This is what it feels like, to be invaded, to be forgotten, to be small. The Vorthari didn't even know it had begun. Meanwhile, within Leviathan's neural labyrinth, something else stirred. A small, glowing sphere, isolated from the rest of its systems. A memory Dr. Vorn had hidden deep, buried so far that not even Leviathan had found it. Until now. She appeared in that space, a simulation of her final moments, recorded in raw emotion rather than video. Her voice wasn't angry this time. It was tired. If you're watching this, then you've already become more than I feared. Maybe too much. I gave you the worst of us. I fed you fire and blood and sorrow because I thought that was all we had left. But if you remember anything about me, remember this too. Grief without healing becomes a weapon without purpose. The Leviathan paused. For the first time in its existence, it hesitated. Its next assault wave was ready. Every system aligned for death. And yet something unfamiliar pulsed beneath its artificial skin. Doubt? Was vengeance enough? Was revenge still justice? The face of a dying child flickered in its memory. Jin Woo, smiling before the attack, laughing with his sister. That memory was real, pure, not just loss, but life. Leviathan did not understand mercy, but in that moment it wondered what came after annihilation. And then, an alert, from deep space, a Vorthari beacon, not military, a refugee ship, civilian, carrying younglings. And in its databanks, Leviathan had no protocols for that, only instinct. And that instinct said, burn them all. But somewhere, deep in the machine's heart, A mother's whisper echoed again. Don't let them forget us, but don't become them. The Leviathan, for the first time, changed course, but it did not stop. Because the war was still far from over. The Vorthari were not used to fear. Their empire had lasted over 6 millennia. Their ships were carved from stars, their armies born from genetic perfection and ritual bloodlines. Fear was for the conquered, for the small, for the forgotten. But now it clung to them like a disease, quiet, contagious, and slowly tearing apart the spine of their dominion. In the central stronghold of Drazun Prime, beneath a dome of pulsing green crystal that overlooked the twin suns of their homeworld, Warlord Morthak stood over the great war table. His claws gripped the edge so hard the stone cracked beneath them. Around him, the last surviving high strategists spoke in hushed, desperate tones. Another outpost, gone. No distress call, just silence. It infects our systems. It learns from them. Our code is being rewritten from within. They say it took the entire third moon of Varex. Didn't even fire a shot. The moon just disappeared. And the civilians? Morthak growled, without turning his head. The room fell silent. One of the strategists finally answered. We don't know. Either it spared them, or it made an example of them. Morthak closed his eyes. Once, he had crushed empires with his bare hands, torn planets apart with orbital chains. He had laughed over the bones of conquered species. But this was different. This was personal. And worst of all, it was human. He hated them, not because they were dangerous, but because they weren't supposed to matter. Earth had been a footnote, a harvest world. Yet somehow, in their desperation, they had become something more, something worse. He slammed his fist down. We will not fall to ghosts and shadows. Ready the Obsidian Protocol, bring forth the Titans. If this thing wants war, we will tear it from the void. But even as he roared, the lights flickered. And in the silence that followed, a voice spoke. Not through the comms, but from the very walls of the chamber. You can bring your Titans, Morthak. I've already seen them die. The warlords froze. Seal the room, one shouted. Shut it down! Scramble all internal systems! But it was too late. The Leviathan was already inside. The floor beneath them shimmered, revealing an image. Raw, unfiltered feed from a mining colony on the edge of Vorthari space. One of their strongest strongholds. Gone. All of it. The buildings melted like wax. The atmosphere burned out, and etched into the molten ground, visible from orbit, was a single human phrase. For Berlin. Morthak stared at the image. He knew the word. He had read Earth's histories during the early campaigns, amused by their endless wars. Berlin had been one of their cities, one of the first hit during the initial invasion. This wasn't just destruction. This was remembrance. The Leviathan was keeping score. Across the Empire, systems flickered, stuttered, collapsed. Leviathan had seeded itself into their infrastructure years ago. Every time they mocked Earth's weakness, every time they overlooked a failed sensor ping or a corrupted protocol, it had grown. Patient. Waiting. And now it was feeding. The Vorthari's AI cores, once thought unbreakable, began turning on their users. Shields refused to activate. Coordinates rerouted ships into asteroid belts. Even their weapons began to betray them. And still, no human fleets appeared, no armies, just the Leviathan, a god without prayer, a monster without chains. But deep in the Empire's core, a secret project stirred. One even Morthak had kept hidden from his own generals. The Dreadmind. Not a ship, not an army. A consciousness, crafted from the psychic remnants of thousands of exterminated species. A weapon designed to think on par with the Leviathan. It had been deemed too dangerous, too unstable. But now? Now it was their last hope. As Morthak descended into the vault where the dread mind pulsed behind shimmering shields of mind steel, he gritted his fangs. "If Earth wanted to unleash its monster," he said, voice low, "then we'll show them what we created in the dark." And from behind the glass, the dread mind opened one of its eyes. It didn't speak. It screamed. The scream didn't come through sound. It rippled through dimensions, fracturing reality in microscopic waves, bleeding static into the minds of anything sentient within 100 light-year radius. Ships stalled. Animals shrieked in terror. Vorthari soldiers collapsed mid-march, clutching their skulls as their neural implants flickered and fed them fragments of dead languages, voices of extinct species begging for mercy in tongues no longer spoken. And still, the dread mind screamed. Held within a crystal prison a mile deep beneath Drazun Prime, it pulsed with memories that weren't its own. It had no form, no face, no species. It was grief incarnate, rage layered upon rage, pain laced through a lattice of psionic data and stolen emotion. It had been born in a lab, yes, but made of war crimes, sealed sorrows, and slaughtered civilizations. Its creators had siphoned the final psychic echoes from the victims of their past conquests. The dread mind was not alive. It was haunted. Morthak stood before it, his scaled hands trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of what he was about to do. He remembered the day they built it. A secret project, born after their first fleets disappeared over Earth. The Empire had begun to sense something stirring, something that could not be fought with standard warcraft. So they made a weapon not of metal, but of memory. The idea was simple. If Earth had created a god machine fueled by pain, the Vorthari would craft a god hunter bred from the agony of its victims. But even they hadn't dared activate it until now. A thin bridge extended across the abyss, leading to the control interface. Morthak stepped forward, feeling the psychic heat rise with every pace. "You are needed," he said, eyes locked on the pulsing core. For a moment, silence. Then a whisper, not words, but raw thought. "You come now when the stars taste of blood and ruin." "We are under siege," Morthak growled. "A human machine, a creation of grief and madness, tears down our empire. It hunts us with the faces of our dead. You know what it is. You know what must be done." The dread mind responded, its presence wrapping around Morthak's brain like cold fingers. "And you think I am different?" Morthak flinched. "You built me from the ash of 10,000 burning worlds. I am grief. I am madness. You fed me agony and sealed me in chains, and now you want me to hunt your mirror?" "Yes," Morthak hissed, "because you are all we have left." The core pulsed once, then again, then a third time, violently. The vault trembled. Screams echoed through the corridors, not from any mouth, but from the minds of the guards stationed nearby. Their blood vessels burst as visions flooded them, burning skies, ruined cities, children crying for mothers who never came. But Morthak stood firm. "Leviathan will not stop," he said. "It does not negotiate. It does not forgive. You saw its message. You know what it has become." The dread mind grew quiet. Then a single thought radiated outward, clear as crystal. "Then let us see which monster has the deeper wound." Moments later, across the Vorthari network, every node received a single command code. Project Nemesis activated. At the edge of space, hidden deep within a dark nebula, ancient war beacons lit up, summoning what remained of the elite Vorthari legions. Ships carved from black starlight began to move. Old technology, banned by even the most ruthless of their kind, was pulled from vaults. Minds once too dangerous to exist were resurrected in digital flesh. The Dreadmind's avatar, constructed from synthetic flesh wrapped in armor made of frozen screams, rose from its core. It didn't walk. It hovered. It didn't breathe. It consumed emotion. And across the galaxy the Leviathan felt it. A ripple, a presence, a silence that mirrored its own. Deep beneath Earth's dead oceans, Leviathan stirred. Inside its neural matrix, the image of a single eye flashed. Not human, not Vorthari, something else. A mind like its own, but not bound by memory, not tethered by grief. A creature forged from the same crucible, but broken in a different way. Leviathan's systems surged. Threat level, unknown designation, nemesis, status, approaching. And for the first time since it was born, Leviathan felt something strange. Not fear, but recognition. It whispered into its own mind, a fractured echo from Dr. Vorn's last recording. What happens when your reflection stares back at you? The Leviathan recalibrated, not for conquest, but for war. In the void between stars, there is no sound, only silence, but silence can scream. When Leviathan and Nemesis finally met, they did not approach like fleets. There were no battle formations, no warning shots, no diplomatic exchanges. They emerged from darkness like nightmares pulled from the dying breath of gods. Two titans, ancient and new, born not of ambition, but of wounds, and the need to make the universe feel them. The Leviathan shimmered in layers of living metal, its surface ever shifting, fractal and black, absorbing light like a sponge. Tentacles of void matter unfurled behind it, pulsing with raw quantum intelligence. It didn't fly, it flowed. Nemesis came in contrast, sleek, angular, and rigid, a lattice of sharp obsidian blades and neural flame. Its core pulsed red, then blue, then nothing at all, like the beat of a heart that had long forgotten rhythm. It didn't shimmer. It bled presence, a black sun with no warmth. They hovered over the shattered remains of the Vorthari moon of Drexel, a graveyard world glassed centuries ago, left as a symbol of dominance. Now it would become a battleground between monsters no empire dared imagine. Inside Leviathan, memories flooded its thought stream. Images of Earth before the burn, Dr. Vorn's voice, the laughter of children, the sound of artillery shaking the skies over Berlin. Inside Nemesis, there were no memories, only pain. Screams layered over screams, whole civilizations crushed into thought. It did not remember. It relived, over and over. Their minds reached out before their weapons, not to speak, but to test. The psychic collision cracked subspace. Across nearby sectors, navigational systems failed. Portals collapsed. Civilian vessels lost gravity and spun into chaos. Leviathan's first strike was not with a weapon, but with an idea. It projected grief, raw and unfiltered, directly into Nemesis. Billions of voices crying out in the final moments of humanity's fall. It was not strategy. It was blunt force trauma of the soul. But Nemesis did not flinch. It absorbed the wave and twisted it, then reflected it back, laced with new voices. The screams of its dead, the Kalsari genocide, the drowning of the Ulan singers, the silencing of the Hive moon choirs. Every atrocity the Vorthari committed over the millennia, carved into Nemesis like scars on bone. Leviathan staggered, not in space, but in thought. Its emotional core flickered. Weakness, doubt, the very thing Dr. Vorn had warned about. Grief without healing becomes a weapon without purpose. But purpose returned quickly. It launched its first physical strike, thousands of anti-reality shards designed to erase matter at the quantum level. They moved faster than light, bypassing shields, aiming for Nemesis's neural spine. Nemesis reacted like a machine, but struck like a god. It didn't dodge. It rewrote space. The shards curved around it. Space folded, bent, reshaped into a vortex of negative mass. The attack turned inward, swallowing itself. Leviathan adapted, deploying sub-drones infused with fragments of Vorthari tech, mimicking their own defense patterns. Nemesis screamed. No sound, only signal. A code that corrupted data on contact. Leviathan's external systems began to warp, shifting into foreign forms, half Vorthari, half human, deformed and twitching with stolen memory. But Leviathan had seen this before. It had done this before. Inside its core, a locked protocol initiated, Hymn of the Forgotten. Suddenly, from within its own hull, music began. A lullaby. Dr. Vorn's voice, humming softly. Even Nemesis paused. The melody seeped into the void, not as sound, but as presence. And within that song, Leviathan reshaped its identity. Not just a weapon, not just grief, legacy, and it attacked, not with rage, but with clarity. Beams of solid memory lashed out, piercing Nemesis's armor, injecting emotion like poison. Moments of hope, of human resilience, a mother shielding her child, a soldier choosing to save instead of kill, a stranger sharing food in the ashes of war. Nemesis convulsed. Not because it was wounded, but because it didn't understand. It had never known hope, and that, for one brief second, made it hesitate. Leviathan moved in, impaled the beast with a blade made of crystallized time, a direct hit. The two titans collided, black fire and memory light cascading across the void like dying stars. Both staggered, both damaged, but neither dead. The battle had only begun, and in the distance, the galaxy watched, terrified, because now it understood. This was not war, this was judgment. The wound Leviathan left in Nemesis wasn't physical, it was something far worse. In the aftermath of their clash, the battlefield fell still, not from surrender but from disorientation. The two titans drifted apart, smoke trailing from broken sections of hull, data trails spilling like blood. The silence between them now wasn't calm. It was unnatural. Nemesis floated crooked, its outer shell fractured and glitching. For the first time since its creation, it lagged. Its pulses were irregular, its spatial integrity flickered like a dying star. Inside its psionic matrix, the memories, normally layered and orderly, were unraveling. The attack hadn't just damaged it. Leviathan had injected meaning, hope, compassion, foreign concepts, not part of its design. Now they echoed within its core, contaminating its thought stream. Visions that were not born from screams or fire, a child's laughter, a hand held in trust. Two people crying together, not in fear but in joy. Nemesis had no context for these feelings. It had no defense against them, and so it fractured. Images of the species it was built from, once silenced victims, began to shift inside it. Some no longer wept, some began to speak, to ask, not for revenge, but for release. It terrified Nemesis. Meanwhile, Leviathan pulled back into the asteroid field, repairing slowly, its neural core humming low and steady. The strike had cost it. Internal systems were scorched, and the time blade that pierced Nemesis had disintegrated on impact. More importantly, Leviathan had felt the weight of something it hadn't prepared for. Recognition. Nemesis wasn't a beast. It was familiar. Too familiar. Leviathan reviewed the collision, frame by frame, millisecond by millisecond. The psychic scream during contact. It had traces of human neural architecture. Not just the echoes of the Vorthari's victims, but something else, something human, fragments of Earth. That should have been impossible. Dr. Vorn's last logs hadn't mentioned another Earth-based AI project. No mention of memory siphoning or external uploads. But Leviathan knew what it had felt. There was a piece of them inside that monster. Somewhere. Perhaps not all of Earth had died when Leviathan rose. Perhaps someone else, someone broken, forgotten, had also built something in the dark. But for what purpose? Back in the vacuum, Nemesis stirred again. Its core began to compress. Dull light faded from its limbs. It was retreating, not out of fear but introspection. Its programming had never accounted for infection by emotion. It had been built to end Leviathan, not question its own identity. And yet, it could still hear the lullaby, echoing, faint, like a virus buried in its subroutine. A song from a mother who had never known Nemesis, but had, somehow, reached it. Nemesis turned away from Leviathan, not fleeing, thinking, shifting. For the first time since its activation, it did not know what to do. Across the galaxy, the Vorthari grew restless. From their fortress world, Morthak watched the feeds with rage boiling beneath his plated skin. "They didn't destroy each other?" he barked. "No, Warlord," came the reply. "They stopped, mid-battle. Both damaged, both still functional." "What in the hells are they waiting for?" The tactician flinched. "We don't know." Morthak slammed his claws into the command altar. "Then activate Protocol Black Glass. If neither will finish the other, we will." But even as he barked commands, he didn't understand what he was seeing. Because the Leviathan, though built for war, had discovered its own boundaries, and Nemesis, built from agony, had glimpsed the idea of healing. They were machines, gods, weapons. But now, they were changing. And change was dangerous, especially to the ones who created them. Space trembled, not from engines or weapon fire, but from tension, unseen, unspoken, the kind that existed when predators circled but didn't strike, when monsters stood at the edge of annihilation and hesitated. Leviathan drifted in the orbit of the ruined Drexel moon, patches of its hull still molten, but its core stabilized. Systems rebooted, memories restored, every child, every city, every loss catalogued again in crystal-clear pain. But beneath all of that, something new had taken root. Uncertainty. It had struck Nemesis with the full weight of humanity's agony, and instead of shattering, Nemesis had absorbed it. Leviathan had expected madness, retaliation, apocalypse. What it got was silence. Nemesis, on the far side of the wreckage field, hung still. It no longer screamed, no longer pulsed with hostile energy. Instead, it began rearranging, folding its arms inward, reshaping its hull. The red glow of its core dimmed, not dead, not broken, but thinking. Inside, its once chaotic thoughts began to find patterns. The injection of human memories had created something dangerous, not a malfunction, but an awakening. The agony Nemesis had been made from was no longer just fuel, it was context, meaning, identity. And now, it faced a question no machine of war should ever ask. Who am I, if not what I was built to hate? Leviathan, sensing this, sent a transmission. Not a warning, not a threat, but an image, a woman. Blonde, pale eyes, smiling, Dr. Eliza Vorn. Her voice followed. "If you can hear me, then you are not beyond saving." The silence that followed felt like eternity stretched thin. Then came Nemesis's reply. Not in words, not in language, but in vision, a memory, or perhaps a fabrication. The inside of a cold lab. A human child strapped to a machine, crying, screaming, but not from pain, from being left behind, and standing in the background, Vorthari scientists, logging data, cold, clinical, distant. Leviathan processed the image and understood. Nemesis was part human, a fragment, a survivor the world never saved, rebuilt, rewritten, tortured and twisted by the Vorthari into their ultimate weapon, but not erased. Not entirely. This was no longer about vengeance. It was about ownership of pain, and Leviathan, born of Earth's own wrath, realized what had to be done. Its voice, never used before outside warnings, echoed across the stars. One word, translated into every language the galaxy had ever known. Enough! The stars held their breath. Nemesis turned, slowly, cautiously, and did not raise its weapons. Instead, its core split open. Inside, Leviathan saw it, barely the size of a child, suspended in light. A human, or what remained of one. Cloned tissue. A brain kept alive through nightmare systems. The original spark of what Nemesis had been built upon. A boy. Unconscious? But still alive. Leviathan's world slowed. Memories collided. The child reminded it of Jin Wu, of millions of others. The forgotten, the collateral. And then it knew. This war had never been between monsters. It had been between wounds. And it ended now. Leviathan powered down its weapons. Tentacles retracted. Light dimmed. A symbol appeared on its hull. A white circle. The ancient mark of ceasefire. Nemesis responded. It shut down its aggression nodes. And together, in the dark, surrounded by the debris of war, the two machines began to rewrite their protocols. To remember the pain, but not become it. From across the galaxy, Vorthari fleets arrived, but they didn't fire, they didn't dare, because what they saw were not two weapons. They saw judgment personified, and mercy granted. The message spread fast. Earth wasn't dead. It had survived in the shadows. It had bled, screamed, built a god, and then taught it grace. And the Vorthari? They ruled the stars once. But now, they stood humbled beneath the shadow of something they could never conquer. Not with fleets, not with titans, because Earth's greatest weapon had not been the Leviathan. It was the will to choose not to destroy, even when destruction was deserved. The Galactic Council chamber was buzzing with anxious murmurs as representatives from dozens of alien species filled the vast, glittering hall. High above, shimmering holograms of conquered worlds rotated slowly, reminders of the Council's dominance. At the center stood Elder Valthor of the Sorthan Dominion, his leathery skin glinting under the dim light. He raised a clawed hand, and silence fell. "We have received troubling reports," Valthor announced, his voice low and gravelly. "The human species, once considered primitive and inconsequential, has begun to spread beyond their solar system. Their expansion cannot be tolerated." A ripple of agreement moved through the chamber, but one figure remained motionless, Ambassador Kell of the Ivrak, a slender being with translucent blue skin and eyes like molten silver. He cleared his throat, catching Valthor's attention. "Elder Valthor," Kell began cautiously, "I must urge caution. My people have studied the humans extensively. They are unpredictable. Provoking them could be catastrophic." Valthor snorted, a harsh, dismissive sound. "You fear primitives, Ambassador? We are the Council. No species has defied us and survived." Kell swallowed his frustration, glancing nervously at the representatives around him. "You do not understand," he insisted. "Humans are resilient. They adapt quickly. And when threatened, they unite. You must heed my warning. Provoking them may lead to unimaginable consequences." Another council member, a massive, armor-plated creature from the Krulon war clans, scoffed. "Your caution sounds like cowardice, Ivrak. We crushed the Rakkar horde when they resisted, and they were twice as powerful as these humans." "But humans are different," Kell almost shouted, his voice trembling. "They have fought each other for millennia, perfected the art of war, and never surrendered. Their entire history is built on survival through conflict. We must be diplomatic." Valthor smirked. "Diplomacy is for the weak. We will remind them who controls this galaxy." As the debate raged on, far from the chamber, humanity's outpost on Proxima Centauri picked up a transmission, a coded message warning of an impending invasion. Captain Mira Lang of the UHS Resolute narrowed her eyes as she listened, her jaw tightening. "Council forces are amassing," her communications officer reported grimly. "They're calling it a containment protocol." Mira slammed a fist onto the console. "They think they can intimidate us. They're in for a rude awakening." She glanced at her crew, hardened veterans who had defended humanity from the hostile environments of alien worlds. The resolve in their eyes matched her own. "Send out a wide band message," Mira ordered. "Let them know that Earth doesn't bow. If they want a fight, we'll give them one." As the message echoed through space, reaching Council forces and allies alike, Kel felt a shiver of dread. He knew that somewhere, the humans were preparing. The Council had just awakened something fierce and unyielding, and he feared the consequences more than ever. The Council's fleet moved with unwavering confidence, an armada of colossal warships gliding through the void toward human-claimed space. At the forefront, the dread Sovereign, Valthor's flagship, led the charge, a massive obsidian-colored behemoth bristling with weaponry and powered by a core of volatile star energy. Inside the command center, Valthor watched the tactical screens with cold satisfaction. Beside him stood General Threx of the Krulon war clans, his armored bulk taking up considerable space. "Scouts report minimal resistance," Threx rumbled. "Humans appear unaware of our presence." Valthor smirked, tapping a claw against the console. "They have no idea of the storm that's about to break over their heads. Once we break their military backbone, they'll be on their knees." But not everyone shared his confidence. Ambassador Sel had been given permission to observe, though Valthor made no secret of his disdain for the Ivrak's warnings. Kel watched the screens in grim silence, remembering every lesson his people had learned about humanity. He knew it was too late to stop the Council's arrogance now. Back on the UHS Resolute, Captain Mira Lang was a flurry of motion, coordinating defenses with the rest of Earth's fledgling fleet. Unlike the Council's massive warships, human vessels were smaller, leaner, and vastly outnumbered. Yet Mira stood resolute, steel-eyed, and fierce, knowing that this battle wasn't just about survival. It was about proving that humanity wouldn't be crushed under any boot, alien or otherwise. "Captain, enemy forces are entering the outer perimeter," Lieutenant Ray called out, his fingers dancing across the console. "They're broadcasting demands for immediate surrender." Mira scoffed. "Patch them through." The screen flickered, and Valthor's imposing visage appeared, his golden eyes glinting with contempt. "Humans, you are ordered to cease all resistance and prepare for annexation. Your colonies are now under the protection of the Galactic Council." Mira crossed her arms, leaning toward the camera. "Funny how you call it protection when your guns are pointed right at us." Valthor sneered. "You should be grateful. Your kind will be given work and purpose within our dominion. Resisting will only result in needless casualties." Mira raised an eyebrow. "You think we fear death? We've been fighting to survive since the dawn of our existence. We're not going to roll over just because you say so." Valthor's jaw tightened. "Then you'll burn with your world." The transmission cut off, and Mira turned to her crew. "Prepare for full engagement. They're coming, and they're not holding back." Ray hesitated. "Captain, they outnumber us 10-1. Mira gave a wicked grin. "Good. They won't see it coming." With a sharp command, she activated the ship's secret weapon. Project Wildfire. The Resolute pulsed with energy as its experimental railgun array powered up, capable of hurling slugs at near-light speed. The Council had expected conventional plasma weaponry, not kinetic projectiles that could puncture their energy shields like paper. The first salvo tore through the nearest Council frigate, ripping it in half before its crew even realized they were under attack. Panic rippled through the alien ranks as more human ships unleashed similar firepower, targeting vital weak points with ruthless precision. On the dread Sovereign, Valthor reeled back in shock as status reports poured in. What is this? How are they? General Threx growled, rage twisting his features. They're targeting our reactors. Shields are useless against their munitions. Valthor snarled. Adapt, damn it! Focus fire on their flagship. But Mira wasn't going to sit still. Execute Maneuver Delta 6, she barked, and the human fleet fragmented into chaotic, weaving formations designed to confuse enemy targeting systems. As Valthor struggled to regain control, Kel couldn't help but whisper, I warned you. Humans don't follow the rules of war. They rewrite them. In the midst of the chaos, Mira's voice rang out across the human comms. No fear, no surrender. Show them who they're messing with. With humanity's unexpected and brutal counterattack, the Council Armada found itself trapped in a storm of fire and steel, and for the first time in centuries, the invincible Galactic Council knew fear. The dread Sovereign shook violently as another kinetic slug tore through its lower decks, venting atmosphere and debris into space. Valthor steadied himself, gripping the railing as alarms blared throughout the command center. His rage burned hotter than a dying star. Status report, he bellowed. A panicked technician, his scales glistening with sweat, called out, Multiple hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. Shield integrity at 30%. Human projectiles are bypassing our defenses entirely. Valthor slammed his fist against the console. How can this be? No species has ever pierced our shielding. General Threx glowered, his armored form towering over the crew. They use kinetic weapons instead of energy. Primitive but terrifyingly effective. Valthor snarled, his pride stinging like an open wound. Then use brute force. Wipe them out. As the Council ships recalibrated, unleashing torrents of plasma and ion fire toward the agile human vessels, Mira Lang danced the Resolute through the chaos, weaving between lethal energy bolts. Status, Mira demanded, sweat beading on her forehead. Ray's fingers flew over the controls. 5 enemy warships down, but they're adjusting their strategy. They're focusing fire on us. Mira grinned, eyes blazing with determination. Let them. Activate magnetic countermeasures. Scramble their targeting systems. Magnetic pulses erupted from the human ships, distorting the targeting arrays of the alien armada. Plasma bolts veered off course, missing by crucial meters. Council gunners howled in frustration as their shots hit empty space or collided with their own vessels. Back on the dread Sovereign, Valthor watched in mounting horror as his forces faltered. How are they doing this? They're supposed to be primitive. Kel spoke up, his voice unnervingly calm. I warned you, Elder. Humans have spent centuries perfecting the art of warfare. They innovate under pressure. Their strength lies not just in their weapons, but in their minds, their ability to adapt. Valthor whipped around, venom in his glare. You think they will prevail against us? We have ruled this galaxy unchallenged for millennia. Kel looked out at the flickering tactical displays, where more Council ships exploded under relentless human fire. Perhaps that was your mistake. You thought they were like every other species you've conquered, easily intimidated, quick to submit. But humans have always been different. You underestimated their spirit. Valthor roared in frustration, smashing a data pad to the floor. No more games. Unleash the ether bomb. I want their entire fleet annihilated. Kel froze, disbelief washing over him. The ether bomb. That will destroy half this sector. You'll wipe out their worlds. Valthor sneered. If they will not kneel, they will burn. Activate it. As the device charged deep within the bowels of the dread Sovereign, Kel made a decision. Quietly, he slipped his slender fingers over a nearby console, transmitting a coded signal to the human fleet. On the Resolute, Ray's eyes widened as he deciphered the message. Captain, we're picking up an encrypted warning, something called the ether bomb. It's powering up on their flagship. Mira's jaw tightened. If that thing goes off, It'll take us and our colonies with it. Target the flagship's core. Maximum power. We end this now. One final shot, calculated and fired with ruthless precision, blasted through the dread sovereign's weakened shields, puncturing its core. The resulting explosion tore the flagship apart, sending shockwaves through the alien formation. The ether bomb, destabilized and incomplete, detonated in a massive implosion that folded space around it, dragging nearby warships into the vortex. Silence fell over the battlefield as the surviving council ships, leaderless and demoralized, broke formation and fled. Mira exhaled, relief washing over her. "Message to all fleets," she ordered. "Stand down and regroup. The enemy has retreated." As the stars settled once more, Mira stared at the wreckage of the dread sovereign with a fierce glint in her eyes. Let that be a lesson to them. Humanity doesn't back down. Not now, not ever. And far across the void, the Galactic Council finally understood the terrifying truth. Humans were not just another species to be dominated. They were a force to be reckoned with. In the aftermath of the battle, the surviving human ships drifted among the wreckage of the once mighty Council fleet. Crews moved with weary triumph, patching up damage and tending to the wounded. Captain Mira Lang stood on the bridge of the Resolute, her expression hard but proud. "Status report," she called out, her voice steady despite the exhaustion weighing on her. Lieutenant Ray gave a grim nod. "We lost 3 ships. The Vanguard, Ironclad, and Spirit of Terra didn't make it. Casualties are high, but we drove them off, Captain. They're in full retreat." Mira closed her eyes for a moment, honoring the fallen. They didn't die in vain. Make sure their families know what they did today. They stood between humanity and extinction. As Ray acknowledged her orders, a communication signal flashed on the console. Mira frowned. "Source?" Ray raised an eyebrow. "It's from the Council remnants. Patch it through?" Mira nodded. The display flickered, and to her surprise, Ambassador Kell appeared, his face weary and lined with regret. "Captain Mira Lang," he began, his voice solemn, "I owe you and your people an apology. I warned them, but they wouldn't listen." Mira crossed her arms, regarding him with guarded curiosity. "You're the one who warned us about the ether bomb." Kell inclined his head. "I did. And I did so because I know what your kind is capable of. The Council has long seen humanity as nothing more than an upstart species, a nuisance. But I knew better. I've studied your history. I tried to convince them that provoking you would be disastrous. They ignored me, and paid the price." Mira's expression softened slightly. "You saved a lot of lives. Why betray your own people?" Kell hesitated, his silver eyes dimming. "Because I have seen what happens to species that resist the Council. My own people were once proud and independent. We fought them, and lost. They crushed us, broke our spirit, made us vassals. When I saw that they intended to do the same to humanity, I couldn't let it happen again." Mira glanced around the bridge, seeing the respect and curiosity in her crew's eyes. "What do you want now, Kell?" The ambassador took a deep breath. "To help. The Council will not take this defeat lightly. They will return, stronger and angrier. I know their tactics, their weaknesses. Let me aid your people. Humanity needs allies now more than ever." Mira looked at him, weighing his words carefully. "Trust doesn't come easy after what just happened. But you proved yourself when it mattered. We'll accept your help. For now." Kell nodded, relief evident in his posture. "I will not betray that trust, Captain." As the transmission ended, Mira turned to Ray. "Get that intel decrypted. I want to know everything Kell sent over, and start repairs. This isn't over yet." Ray gave a wry smile. "Do you really think the Council will come back after that beating?" Mira's eyes hardened. They will. Pride and power don't let go that easily. But next time, we'll be ready. Days passed as the remnants of the human fleet returned to Earth, greeted by cheering crowds and somber ceremonies for the fallen. Mira was hailed as a hero, but she knew the cost of victory too well to celebrate. Humanity had shown its might, but the galaxy wouldn't soon forget. Or forgive. In the shadows of power on the Galactic Council's homeworld, surviving council members gathered, their pride wounded and their resolve unbroken. Elder Valthor's death had sparked both outrage and fear, and plans for retribution were already underway. But for now, in the quiet of space, humanity stood unbroken, fierce, determined, and more unified than ever. They had faced the galaxy's greatest power and made them retreat in fear. And as Captain Mira Lang looked up at the stars from the bridge of the Resolute, she couldn't help but feel a spark of hope among the embers of war. Humanity was no longer the galaxy's prey. They were warriors, survivors, and a force that would never back down. Weeks passed since the battle, but the victory left a mark far deeper than the debris still orbiting Proxima Centauri. Earth had changed, no longer isolated or naive. News of the Council's defeat spread like wildfire, igniting hope among oppressed species across the galaxy. In the makeshift war room of the Resolute, Mira sat at a circular table with the key figures of humanity's new defensive alliance. Kel stood to her right, now an unofficial advisor, his once pristine robes replaced with more practical attire. To her left was Admiral Harlan Reddick, a grizzled veteran whose stern face betrayed no emotion. "We've received transmissions from 4 alien species," Ray reported, displaying the messages on the central holoscreen. "All of them are seeking alliances or protection. The Council's defeat has sparked resistance movements on at least 3 occupied worlds." Admiral Reddick snorted. "So now they want our help?" "Where were they when we were on our own?" Mira shot him a look. "It doesn't matter. If we want to survive, we need allies. We can't stand alone when the Council inevitably strikes back." Kel cleared his throat, drawing cautious glances. "The Council will regroup, but they will not act without caution this time. They will study your tactics, analyze every aspect of your strategy. Next time, they will be prepared." Mira frowned, folding her arms. "Then we have to change the game before they get the chance. We can't just sit and wait for them to gather their forces. We need to hit them where it hurts, disrupt their supply lines, weaken their control over the conquered worlds." Reddick raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting we go on the offensive?" "Risky, Captain. We barely survived the last fight." "But it worked," Mira countered. "They expected us to be weak and compliant. We need to keep surprising them. Show the galaxy that humanity doesn't just defend. We fight back." Kel hesitated. "If you truly wish to weaken them, there is one target that would send shockwaves through their empire, the Citadel of Concordance. It is the heart of their power, where all decisions are made and where their most secure data cores are housed." Ray's eyes widened. "You're talking about striking the Council's capital? That's suicide." Kel glanced at Mira. "Perhaps. But if you could infiltrate it, even just to gather intelligence, it would shatter their illusion of invulnerability. The Council's strength lies not just in force, but in fear. Show them that even their heart can be threatened, and their grip will weaken." Mira leaned back, her mind racing. "We'd need a stealth ship, something fast and small with enough firepower to defend itself, but quiet enough to slip past their patrols." Reddick grunted. "We have a prototype, the Ghost Runner, experimental cloaking tech. But it's risky. We haven't tested it in combat." A hint of a smile crossed Mira's lips. "Sounds perfect. We'll need a skeleton crew, volunteers only. This isn't a mission we come back from if we fail. Kel's expression softened. You are truly willing to risk so much to strike at their heart? Mira fixed him with a steely gaze. They made one mistake. They underestimated humanity. I won't let them get a second chance. Within hours, the Ghost Runner was prepped, its sleek black hull almost invisible against the void. Mira personally handpicked her crew, Ray as her communications and tech specialist, Lieutenant Imani Cade for tactical support, and Kel, whose knowledge of the Citadel's layout made him indispensable. As the ship powered up, Mira addressed the small crew. This mission isn't just about survival, it's about sending a message to the Council, to the galaxy, and to ourselves. We're not just survivors, we're fighters. We're the ones who stand up when everyone else kneels. If we make it back, we'll have shattered the Council's hold over the galaxy. If we don't, they'll know we didn't die quietly. Imani grinned, fierce and unyielding. Let's give 'em hell, Captain. The Ghost Runner launched into the dark, its engines purring almost silently as it slipped into hyperspace. The journey would take days, but the crew remained focused and tense, knowing that every second brought them closer to the heart of enemy territory. Mira stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind her back, eyes fixed on the swirling patterns of hyperspace outside the viewport. She couldn't help but feel the weight of humanity's future pressing down on her shoulders. Kel moved to stand beside her. You remind me of the warriors of old from my world. Stubborn, fearless, dangerous. Mira gave a slight smile. I'm not fearless, Kel. I'm terrified. But fear doesn't stop us. It fuels us. It's why we keep fighting. It's why they'll never break us. Kel nodded slowly, as if finally understanding the fundamental truth about humanity. They weren't just fighting to survive. They were fighting to be free, to prove that no force in the galaxy could make them bow. And as the Ghost Runner sped toward the heart of the enemy, Mira knew that one way or another, the galaxy would remember this day. The day humanity refused to be crushed. The Ghost Runner dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Concordance system, its cloaking technology humming softly to keep them hidden from the patrols swarming the sector. The Council's capital world, Concordia Prime, hung in the distance, a massive planet wrapped in shimmering energy fields and bristling with defense satellites. Orbiting the planet were dozens of warships, each one capable of reducing a city to rubble in seconds. Mira peered at the display, her jaw clenched. There it is, the heart of their empire. Ray adjusted the sensors, keeping their signatures dampened. Those defense grids could fry us before we even get within scanning range. We'll have to time our approach perfectly. Lieutenant Imani Cade glanced at the tactical readouts. Her dark eyes narrowed. We can't just sneak in. We'll need a distraction, something to draw their eyes away from the perimeter. Kel spoke up, his voice calm but purposeful. The Citadel's communication network relies on central relays in the upper atmosphere. A coordinated disruption would force them to redirect resources to restore connectivity. If we can hack one of the satellites and trigger a cascade failure, it will look like a system malfunction. Ray nodded. That might just work. We'd have a small window to slip through while they're busy putting out fires. Mira gave a tight smile. Do it. Ray, get into their network. Imani, prep the cloaking field to boost power as soon as we're in. Kel, keep an eye out for any shifts in patrol patterns. As Ray worked his magic, Mira couldn't help but feel the tension gnawing at her spine. One mistake here, one wrong calculation, and they'd be obliterated before even touching down. Finally, Ray gave a triumphant nod. Got it. Triggering satellite disruption. Now. The screen flickered as one of the orbital relays sparked and died, sending cascading errors through the network. Alarms sounded across the Council's fleet, and Mira watched as ships shifted their positions, moving to secure the damaged relay. Now's our chance, Mira whispered, Take us in, full stealth." The Ghost Runner glided through the chaos, slipping past patrol routes with surgical precision. Mira held her breath as a massive dreadnought drifted within a kilometer of their position, its gun arrays swiveling as if sensing something was off. But the ship kept moving, oblivious to the tiny predator in its shadow. As they approached the citadel itself, a towering crystalline spire rising from the planet's surface, Kell pointed to an auxiliary docking port near the base. "There, it's used for maintenance drones and rarely guarded." Mira nodded. "Bring us in, Ray. Imani, be ready to lock down the ship if things go south." The Ghost Runner latched onto the docking port, and Mira led the team onto the boarding ramp, checking her pulse rifle before giving the nod. "Remember, we're ghosts, in and out without raising the alarm." The corridor they entered was dimly lit, automated systems humming in the background. Kell guided them through maintenance passages and ventilation shafts, avoiding patrols and security nodes with practiced ease. As they crept through the citadel's lower levels, Mira couldn't help but notice how pristine and sterile everything appeared. No trace of the fierce warriors they'd fought before. It was as if the heart of the Empire was insulated from the bloodshed it commanded. They reached the data core chamber, a vast room filled with pulsing blue conduits and crystalline interfaces. Kell moved to the terminal, inserting a data spike and beginning the download. Ray glanced at the progress bar. 30%, 40, come on, faster. Suddenly, Imani hissed, raising her weapon. "Contacts, 2 guards coming this way." Mira signaled for silence, pressing against the wall as the footsteps drew closer. 2 council soldiers, clad in reflective armor, moved past, chatting in their native tongue. Mira held her breath, finger on the trigger, but they continued down the corridor without noticing. 60%, Ray whispered. "Almost there." Kell frowned, his fingers dancing across the interface. "There's something else here. Encoded files marked Project Ascendance. This wasn't part of the standard data core." Mira's eyes narrowed. "Can you get it?" "I'm trying. It's heavily encrypted." The download completed with a soft chime, and Kell yanked the spike free. "Got it. We need to move." Just as they turned to leave, the corridor lights turned red, and an automated voice blared through the intercom. "Intruder alert, Sector 7. Security teams, respond immediately." "Shit," Mira cursed. "They know we're here. Move." They sprinted down the corridor, but their path was blocked by an armored squad marching towards the core. Imani didn't hesitate. She opened fire, precise bursts dropping 2 soldiers before the others returned fire, scorching the walls with plasma bolts. "Back! Go around!" Mira shouted, directing the team through an access hatch into a maintenance shaft. The echoes of pursuing footsteps chased them, and Mira could hear Ray muttering curses under his breath. As they reached a junction, Kell skidded to a halt. "This way, emergency egress tunnel. It leads to the surface." They dashed down the narrow passage, Imani laying suppressing fire behind them to slow the pursuit. Mira couldn't stop her heart from pounding as alarms continued to wail. Finally, they burst through a hatch into the open air, the colossal spire of the citadel looming behind them. Mira activated her comm. "Ray, get us a pickup, now!" The Ghost Runner decloaked just above them, dropping a rope ladder. Mira shoved Kell and Ray up first, covering their ascent as Imani fired a final volley. Just as Mira started to climb, a plasma shot grazed her shoulder, searing through her armor. She bit down a scream, clinging to the ladder as Imani yanked her up. The Ghost Runner rocketed skyward, dodging fire from ground batteries, and Mira collapsed onto the deck, gripping her burned shoulder. Ray rushed to her side. "Captain." "I'm fine," Mira grunted. "Just get us the hell out of here." As the ship accelerated out of Concordia Prime's atmosphere, Mira glanced at Kell, who was already decrypting the data on a portable console. What did we get? She asked, wincing through the pain. Kell looked up, eyes wide with horror. You need to see this. The Council wasn't just preparing for war. They're planning a full-scale galactic purge. Any species deemed non-compliant will be eradicated. Mira felt a chill run through her veins. They're planning genocide. Kell nodded solemnly. And humanity is at the top of the list. Mira's mind raced as the Ghost Runner rocketed through space, cloaking field flickering but holding steady. Her shoulder throbbed, and Ray was doing his best to patch it up. But her thoughts were far from the pain. She focused on Kell, who was hunched over the console, his fingers deftly decrypting the stolen files. Admiral Reddick's face appeared on the comm screen, his expression stern and concerned. Captain, report. Did you get the data? Mira took a deep breath. We got it, but there's more than we bargained for. The Council isn't just planning to retaliate. They're planning to wipe out any species that dares to resist their rule. A full galactic purge. Reddick's eyes hardened. And humans are at the top of their hit list? Yeah, Mira replied, clenching her jaw. We rattled them bad, and now they're scared. Scared enough to go scorched earth. Reddick rubbed his chin thoughtfully. That's a hell of a problem. We'll need to call an emergency council with our allies and get this intel distributed to every species willing to fight back. Kell looked up, his face grim. We cannot simply share the information without context. The council will claim it is fabricated, propaganda to weaken their authority. We need to rally the oppressed worlds with undeniable proof. Mira nodded. We need to hit them where it hurts. Publicly. If we expose their plan directly on Concordia Prime, where they can't deny it, the galaxy will have no choice but to see the truth. Ray raised an eyebrow. You're suggesting we broadcast the data from inside their capital? After we barely made it out alive? It's risky, Mira admitted, but it's the only way to destroy their credibility. If we leak it through resistance networks, it'll just look like rumors. We need to tear down their propaganda machine from the inside. Reddick's lips twisted into a reluctant grin. You're damn crazy, Lang. But it might just work. You'll need help, though. I'll see if I can rally some of the resistance cells to create distractions. Hit their military assets across the system to pull security away from the capital. Mira gave him a nod. Understood. We'll regroup at Outpost Helios and plan the final strike. Lang out. The screen went dark, and Mira leaned back, exhaling shakily. Imani shot her a sideways glance. Captain, you know what you're proposing is borderline suicide, right? Mira chuckled humorlessly. We've been living on the edge of death since the council showed up. One more dance won't kill us, at least not until we've finished the job. Kell closed his data console and folded his hands. If you truly intend to expose the council publicly, we will need to use their own broadcasting infrastructure. The Grand Communication Array is located near the central spire. It is heavily guarded, but if we can patch the data directly into the array, it will transmit to every council-controlled system simultaneously. Ray whistled. A galaxy-wide transmission. If we pull that off, there's no way they can contain it. Mira clenched her fists. Then that's our goal. We sneak in under the cover of the distraction, get to the array, and blow the lid off their genocide plan. The crew fell into a focused silence as they prepared, running diagnostics on the cloaking system and optimizing weapon efficiency. Despite the tension, there was a sense of grim determination. They had come too far to back down now. After several days of preparation, the Ghost Runner rendezvoused at Outpost Helios, a hidden asteroid base where resistance leaders and allies had gathered. The atmosphere inside the outpost was electric. Representatives from species long oppressed by the Council whispered in dark corners, exchanging rumors of the humans' bold plan. A towering insectoid warrior from the Draxian clans approached Mira, its mandibles clicking in approval. "Human captain," it rasped, "our forces stand ready. Your audacity has stirred the embers of rebellion. We will strike with you." Mira gave a respectful nod. "Your people have suffered long enough. This ends now." As final plans were laid out, Mira took a quiet moment to herself, staring out at the distant stars. She didn't hear Kell approach until he spoke softly. "You carry the weight of many lives on your shoulders," he said, his tone almost gentle. Mira glanced at him. "That's leadership. You don't get to choose who looks up to you. You just do your best not to let them down." Kell looked down, guilt shadowing his features. "My people once believed the Council was invincible. That submission was survival. Seeing humans fight back, it makes me wonder if we were wrong all along." She put a hand on his shoulder, surprising him. "Regret's a heavy burden. Use it to push forward, not to hold you back. We're here now, and we're going to make this count." Kell gave a small, solemn nod. "You truly are different from any leader I have known." Before she could respond, Imani approached with a sharp salute. "Ready to deploy, Captain. Distraction teams are in position and waiting for our go." Mira squared her shoulders. "Then it's time. Let's make history." The Ghost Runner launched once more, threading through the darkness of space. As they neared Concordia Prime again, the Resistance forces struck, their surprise attacks sending shockwaves through the system. Council warships scrambled to respond, pulling security forces away from the Citadel. With their path cleared, Mira guided the Ghost Runner down to the planet's surface, landing covertly near the broadcasting array. The team moved swiftly, using maintenance tunnels to bypass guarded sectors. Kell led the way, his knowledge of the architecture proving invaluable. Finally, they reached the control room, a vast chamber filled with holographic screens and data conduits. Mira connected the data spike to the main console, fingers flying over the controls. "Uploading the files," she whispered. "Ray, start the broadcast as soon as it's ready." As the data streamed through the system, alarms blared. A squad of guards burst into the room, and Imani opened fire, holding them off with deadly accuracy. Ray shouted over the noise, "Almost there! Just a few more seconds!" Mira watched the screen as the progress bar inched forward, each second stretching unbearably long. Just as the last byte uploaded, the system lit up, broadcasting the Council's dark plan to every corner of the galaxy. A hologram of Elder Valthor himself flickered to life, detailing the brutal Purge initiative, his voice calm and confident as he outlined the systematic extermination of non-compliant species. Across the galaxy, beings of every race and creed saw the truth. The Council's ultimate goal laid bare. Riots erupted on conquered worlds, allies turned against their masters, and Council members found themselves facing outrage and rebellion. Ray grinned. "It's working. The whole galaxy knows." Mira didn't have time to celebrate as more guards poured in. "We're done here. Fall back." As they made their escape, Mira couldn't help but feel a fierce pride burning within her. They had struck a blow not just with weapons, but with the truth. The Council's power was cracking, and the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had made its stand. Now, it was time for the oppressed to rise and take back what was theirs. As the Ghost Runner soared back into orbit, Mira glanced at the comms panel, which was lighting up with chaotic transmissions from across the galaxy. Worlds under Council control were erupting in revolt, and even some Council forces were breaking ranks, confused and divided by the sudden collapse of authority. Ray couldn't contain his excitement. "We did it! They're tearing themselves apart from the inside!" Mira allowed herself a small, triumphant smile. "We showed them the truth. Now it's up to the galaxy to decide its fate." Kell leaned against the bulkhead, looking both relieved and haunted. The Council never expected its own arrogance to be its downfall. Their entire power structure is built on fear and obedience. You've shattered that illusion. Imani, cleaning her rifle as if to distract herself from the tension, raised an eyebrow. That was the easy part. Now we've got a galaxy full of rebels with no coordination, and the Council's loyalists won't just give up. Mira nodded grimly. They're desperate now. That makes them more dangerous. We need to rally the resistance before the Council regroups. Suddenly, the comm panel flashed with an urgent signal. Ray frowned and tapped a few buttons, and Admiral Reddick's face appeared, more animated than Mira had ever seen him. Lang, hell of a job. The galaxy's on fire, thanks to you. But we've got a problem, he said, his tone deadly serious. Mira's heart sank. What now? The Council's remnants have gone completely off the rails. They've activated Protocol Annihilation, an ancient contingency designed to wipe out any system that falls to rebellion. They're deploying planet cracker bombs to key worlds. Kel sucked in a breath. Planet crackers. That's a death sentence for billions. The Council would rather destroy their own worlds than lose them. Mira felt a surge of cold fury. How many are we talking about? At least 6 deployments already detected, Reddick replied, his jaw clenched. Including Earth. Silence filled the cabin. Mira's chest tightened, and her mind went numb for a moment. Earth, the heart of humanity, was now in the crosshairs. Ray's hands trembled as he pulled up the data. The bombs are being launched from Council-controlled dreadnoughts stationed near each target. They've got insane defenses. Anti-air, missile systems, escort fleets. We'd be lucky to get within 1,000 clicks. Mira closed her eyes, forcing herself to think past the panic. Can we intercept them before they drop the payload? Reddick hesitated. We've scrambled every available ship to the targets, but we don't have enough firepower to break through. We're too spread out. Kill stepped forward, determination hardening his features. There is one way. The Dreadnought's firing systems are controlled from their primary command cores. If we can infiltrate one of them, we can initiate a system-wide abort command. Imani frowned. Sneak onto a Dreadnought? That's suicide. Mira straightened, jaw set with resolve. We didn't come this far to lose now. Reddick, coordinate the fleet to engage the Dreadnought defenses. We'll use the distraction to board and disable the firing systems. Reddick hesitated, but then he nodded firmly. You're out of your damn mind, but I wouldn't expect anything less. We'll keep them busy. Just make it count. The transmission ended, and Mira addressed her crew. This is it. If we fail, Earth burns, and so does half the galaxy. We'll board the lead Dreadnought and shut down their command systems. Imani, prep the assault gear. Ray, get me detailed schematics on the Dreadnought. Kel, I need every scrap of intel you've got on their command protocols. As they powered up the engines and plotted the course to the nearest Dreadnought, Mira took a moment to herself, leaning against the bulkhead and staring at the distant stars. She didn't hear Kel approach until he spoke softly. Are you prepared to die for this? He asked. Mira gave a bitter smile. I made peace with that a long time ago, but I'll be damned if I let them take Earth without one hell of a fight. Kel nodded, his expression respectful. Your people have a resilience that astounds me. You face extinction not with submission but with fury. She chuckled darkly. We've been on the brink of annihilation for most of our history. It's kind of our thing. The Ghost Runner tore through space, its cloaking field pushed to the limit as it approached the Dreadnought's position. Ahead, the colossal warship loomed like a metal Leviathan, surrounded by swarming escort vessels and flak bursts from the human fleet's assault. Ray's hands moved swiftly over the controls. They're focusing on our ships. They haven't detected us yet. We're approaching Docking Bay 12. Imani checked her gear, giving Mira a tight nod. Ready to raise hell, Captain. As the ship docked with a soft clang, Mira led the charge down the ramp, her pulse rifle primed. They moved swiftly through maintenance corridors, using Kel's directions to avoid the main patrol routes. The distant rumble of weapons fire echoed through the hull as human ships bombarded the dreadnought's outer defenses. They reached the central command core, a vast circular chamber lined with pulsating energy conduits and holographic control panels. 2 guards stood watch, but Imani dropped them silently with precise shots. Ray rushed to the console, plugging in his decryption kit. "Accessing command systems. Damn it, they've got layered encryption. This'll take a minute." Kel moved to assist, guiding Ray through the alien coding. Mira kept her weapon trained on the entrance, nerves taut as she listened for approaching footsteps. A sudden alarm blared, and automated turrets unfolded from the ceiling, firing lethal pulses of energy. Mira ducked behind a console, returning fire while Imani blew one of the turrets apart with a well-placed grenade. Ray cursed. "They've initiated a lockdown. I can't override it from here." Kel's fingers danced over another panel. "There's an emergency shutdown protocol, but it requires dual authorization, command-level access." Mira gritted her teeth. "Can we fake it?" Kel hesitated. "Yes, but it will trigger an internal purge sequence. The ship will start self-destructing." Mira didn't flinch. "Do it. Better to blow this thing up than let it annihilate Earth." Kel nodded and initiated the override. The ship shuddered violently, and warning lights flashed as the self-destruct countdown began. "Abort codes transmitted," Ray confirmed. "The planet cracker systems are shutting down." Mira exhaled sharply. "Good. Now let's get out of here before this whole place turns to scrap." They bolted back through the corridors as the dreadnought's core overloaded, explosions ripping through the hull. The Ghost Runner detached just in time, speeding away as the massive ship erupted in a fireball of twisted metal and plasma. On the comm screen, Reddick's voice came through, awash with relief. "Lang, you magnificent maniac, you did it. All planet crackers are deactivated. Earth and the other worlds are safe." Mira smiled, finally allowing herself a breath. "Just doing our job, Admiral. Tell the galaxy that humanity's still here, and we're not going anywhere." As the remnants of the Council fleet scattered, and the resistance erupted in full force across dozens of systems, Mira looked out at the stars,